Welcome to the Ultimate Gaming Realm, and this is your curator, Dixon, logging on. How's it going, everyone, and welcome to Vintage Realms of Gaming. And today I want to talk about an awesome compilation that was released over a month ago called Rare Replay for the Xbox One console. Rare Replay is a compilation released at the beginning of last month in August of 2015, only on the Xbox One game console. Come to think of it, this review will be my first Xbox One game review since I got my Xbox One game console last November of 2014. This compilation was announced at this year's E3, which was about 3 months ago, and it was set to release on August 4th, which again that was last month, and I totally reserved for that one because with the type of games this compilation had on it, I totally had to get it. Rare Replay is also a 30th anniversary celebration compilation, which had up to 30 games from the beginning days on the ZX Spectrum home computer to the Xbox 360 home console. And the compilation itself is $30. Yes, it's all about the big 30. A $30 compilation with 30 games from Rare from all generations within the 30-year range. Actually, I would have to say 32 years, because the first game, Jetpack, was released in 1983. And in between 1983 and 1985, there were other games released from the same creators from the UK, like Lunar Jetman, which is a sequel to Jetpack, and other games like Attic Attack, Saber Wolf, Underworld, Nightlore, and Gunfright. The creators of all those games, Tim and Chris Stamper, were under a predecessor publisher called Ultimate Play the Game, which that British publisher was founded in 1982 and discontinued in 1988. And in 1985, the creators of all the games that I just mentioned, the Stamper brothers, founded Rare. Or Rare, or Rare Limited, whatever you want to call it. Now that we got the basic backstory out of the way, there's more to the backstory, but that's not exactly what I'm here for. I just want to give you the basics so that way you get the idea of what the compilation is all about. I probably might give you a little bit more details on the backstory at the end, but in the meantime, let's just focus on the Rare Replay compilation itself. First things first, like other common Xbox One games, you have to install the game first. But with this game, or compilation like this, that features games from the Xbox 360 that has its own installation of backwards compatibility, the Xbox 360 or Xbox Live Arcade games each has its own installation. And the Rare Replay disc is still required to play the games, unless if you bought the digital version, of course. And I understand that can be kind of a pain, but I guess that's the way it is, The neat thing about the backwards compatibility with the Xbox 360 or Xbox Live Arcade games that you previously played through your Xbox profile on your Xbox 360 console, and what your score and achievements that you accomplish will transfer through the Xbox profile on your Xbox One. And that's a great feature to have. And speaking of backwards compatibility, Xbox 360 Rare titles from the compilation got an early head start, but the news about the backwards compatibility gets even much better. More backwards compatibility with 360 games or Xbox Live titles is coming this fall to Xbox One, and the backwards compatibility was also announced at E3. And using an Xbox One controller on any Xbox 360 game is going to be much smoother than ever. Well, I think I'm getting a little ahead of myself on that one. It's just too early to tell. And I'm getting off track right now, so back to the game. Now when you start the game up, you've been greeted with an awesome 30th Anniversary Hall of Fame tribute intro to all the hard work that Rare accomplished over 30 years. 30 years in the making, baby! Woo! Then at the title screen in front of the theater, after you press A to enter, you're greeted with 3 gallery choices. Rare Revealed, which is bonus content like videos, featurettes, making of Rare games, concept showcases, Previously Unseen, which are projects that were never released. And last, Top Secret Rare Tunes, which is music previously unheard. The only way to view the content is you have to play the games and aim for certain goals as described. On the upper left screen during the selection, there's a theater ticket, and if you press X, you get the view of how many stamps you earned so far. Now the snapshots. No, it's not pictures or thumbnails. In this game, snapshots is what you call challenges. That only work with retro games in between the years of 1983 and 1994. All they are is just certain challenging goals you have to beat. Now let's move on to the games, shall we? Rare Replay Compilation has 30 games that were developed for the ZX Spectrum, the Nintendo Entertainment System, the arcade, the Nintendo 64, the original Xbox, and the Xbox 360. After Rare was founded by the Stamper Brothers in 1985, they developed a lot of games for most Nintendo projects. They also helped out Sega in somewhat ways too. Well, mainly in the 16-bit era. But roughly the compilation doesn't have any Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis games on it, which is too bad, because that was actually my favorite era. Throughout the mid-90s, Nintendo had an exclusive partnership with Rare, until 2001, when Microsoft purchased the rights. Now what's cool about the retro games that were on the compilation from the ZX Spectrum and the NES, they have save states, and a rewind option. Just in case if you make a mistake, you can rewind and fix that mistake. Or if you save before that mistake, you can always load the save state. And both save states and rewind option really does come in handy, because those games were really difficult on older platforms. Now that's what I really call a step up from the past. Another cool thing about the retro games is that some of the games have an infinite lives, or infinite continues, or infinite time limit option. And they should have had those options from day one. Well, mainly unlimited continues, because that's the thing that I hated the most in the past, is limited continues or no continues, or long and cryptic password system. Those are the classic flaws in gaming history that I never will miss. So I'm very happy that Rare Replay fixed all those frustrations in the best of their ability. And the other neat thing about the retro games is that each of them have their own wallpaper, and you have an on and off option for them. The better thing about having the wallpaper option off is making the game screen a little bigger. It's too bad that you can't stretch the screen though. And there's also a filter option. Well, they only have one for each retro game, and that is the CRT, where it feels like you're playing on an old TV. I thought that option was pretty cool, but probably wouldn't put too much gameplay using that CRT option though. And as I mentioned, the newest challenge to these retro games, the snapshot challenges, which can be fun, but the rewind option is turned off for the snapshot modes, of course, because they're all about challenges. I find it neat to play some of the earliest games that were ported from a British home computer for the first time. I mean, if you try to get an old ZX Spectrum from the UK, hooking it up in the US, especially for systems that old, would be a hassle. Hell, you can ask Lazy Game Reviews about that, or check out his hardware review on the ZX Spectrum, then you will know what I mean. The games probably look much smoother on the Rare Replay compilation anyway. Only one of these games I played before was Jetpack. That game came with the latest Jetpack game released for the Xbox Live Arcade on the Xbox 360, Jetpack Refueled, which is also available in this Rare Replay compilation. And it's also an alternative way of playing the original 1983 Jetpack, since it came as a bonus, except that one included in the refuel you can't use cheats for. Now the rest of the games on the ZX Spectrum is the first time for me, and they are kinda tough to figure out and understand because the graphics are quite dated. The ZX Spectrum is an 8-bit British home computer, but it has limited hardware capacity compared to the 8-bit NES home console. And with the way the games are made for the ZX Spectrum, I have no exact clue what I'm doing. The snapshot challenges did help me figure out a few things and help me understand a little bit, but I just need to put more time and effort into these games. Normally I'm good at getting around with old games like this and enjoying them as I do, but right now the only two ZX Spectrum games I'm used to are Jetpack and the sequel Lunar Jetman. Now the NES games. In 1987, Rare did their first NES game, Slalom, which is basically a single-player ski racing game. Plus from there, Rare Replay also has other awesome titles from the NES, such as RCA Pro-Am 1 and 2, Cobra Triangle, Snake Rattle and Roll, Digger T-Rock, Solar Jetman, which is the third installment in the Jetpack Jetman series, and of course one of the most memorable and hardest games of all time, Battletoads. Battletoads on the NES was one game that I would love to hate because of the extreme over-the-top difficulty. And it's also one of the games I really want to love because everything else around the Battletoads is quite awesome. And I got a lot more to talk about the NES game of Battletoads, but I'm going to save that for another video. And speaking of Battletoads, let me in on the better news. Rare Replay has the Battletoads Arcade. That one is the biggest gem in the collection. And it's for the first time having an arcade emulation being ported onto a console, especially in a compilation. And Battletoads Arcade is much better, much easier, much bloodier, much funnier than the Battletoads game on the NES. And the coolest thing about it is you can play up to 3 players with all 3 Toads. It's pretty much like Ninja Turtles Turtles in Time, especially with that 3D effect when you kick or throw somebody in front of the camera. And the game has unlimited continues. It was the first time I played it, and I have beaten the game with all 3 Toads. And just like with Turtles in Time, the replay value on this game is extremely high. And if you're looking to get your hands on the Battletoads arcade game, Rare Replay on the Xbox One is the easiest way to do it. And that's another reason why I recommend the Rare Replay compilation. And Battletoads Arcade is also the only arcade port in Rare Replay, and it's also one of the last games in yearly order on the Rare Replay to use the rewind feature, because the ongoing games from there are the Nintendo 64 games, and they don't have special features or challenges like the previous retro games did. But Nintendo 64 games still have the wallpaper option though, and the first Nintendo 64 title Rare originally did was one of the launch titles in 1996. Gold! Killer Instinct Gold is an updated arcade port of Killer Instinct 2, and ported onto the Nintendo 64 with new updates and new modes. However, the regular Killer Instinct 1 and 2 games are not in the compilation either, because they're already available for the Xbox One download, which the only way how you can get those games is that you have to get the complete packs of Seasons 1 and 2 of Killer Instinct Remake. Yes, Killer Instinct had a remake, by the way, in 2013, shortly after the Xbox One game console launched. I'm glad that they added the Killer Instinct Gold on the compilation, since the downloadable versions of the first 2 Killer Instinct games are already available on the Killer Instinct Remake. Well, depending on how you purchase the Killer Instinct Remake, of course. And Rare Replay has other great titles from the Nintendo 64, like Blast Corps, Jet Force Gemini, and the last one they did during their end of the Nintendo 64's lifespan, which makes it pretty difficult of having the game in the Nintendo 64 collection nowadays. And that also makes it another gem in the collection. That one is Conker's Bad Fur Day.
Let's see. That way or that way? That way smells a bit ooey. Let me see. Uh-oh.
Oh no! I think I've had too much!
Got me! Somebody get me!
Oh, you want some great stuff?
Yeah! I think the round's on me. I'm gonna get tanked tonight. Cool. This day ain't turned out quite so bad after all. Huh. Oh, hang on. Let's see. Big hand is... Yeah. Hey, 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock. Oh yeah, I remember.
There were 3 other titles that were originally on the Nintendo 64, and they updated the 3 for the Xbox Live Arcade on the previous generation. And Rare Replay includes only the updated Xbox Live Arcade ports of those games, which is totally fine by me. Those 3 games, by the way, are Banjo & Kazooie, the sequel Banjo & Tooie, and a spiritual successor to a game from Rare that's not on the compilation due to legal issues, but at least this one is, and that spiritual successor is Perfect Dark. The 3 updated Nintendo 64 games from Xbox Live Arcade are just like Xbox 360 game releases. When you select one of the games from Rare Replay, they transfer you out of Rare Replay and take you to the Xbox 360 emulated version of the game. And when you quit an Xbox 360 game, they direct you back to the Xbox One dashboard. I guess that's the way it is. Now moving on. The 3 updated Nintendo 64 games are still on the list by when they were originally released from the Nintendo 64 games in the early order. And like I said, Conker's Bad Fur Day was one of the last Nintendo 64 games to be released. And precisely one of the last Rare games to be released on any Nintendo console, due to Rare being purchased by Microsoft. The first game Rare released under Microsoft was Grabbed by the Ghoulies in 2003 for the original Xbox, which is a kid's scary tale humor type game like Haunted House, for instance. I haven't actually played this one on the original Xbox, but I hear the game had mixed reviews, but when I played it for the first time on this compilation, I thought it was pretty interesting. Probably more interesting than the original Xbox version, since the Rare Replay can play in 1080p. I'll look into more of Grabbed by the Ghoulies for some other time. Now let's conclude the rest of the Rare Replay compilation with the Xbox 360 games. I'm sure most of you Xbox 360 fans are familiar with games from Rare being on the Xbox 360 console and the Xbox Live Arcade. And Rare was a big promotion for the launch date of Xbox 360 console in 2005, with 2 launch titles of Cameo Elements of Power and Perfect Dark Zero, which Perfect Dark Zero is a prequel to the original Perfect Dark from the Nintendo 64. Perfect Dark Zero had 2 editions, one a regular edition and a limited edition, which the limited edition I still currently own. Very neat collector's edition, by the way. And within a year later from there, Rare had a create a farm type of game called Viva Pinata, and later a sequel titled Trouble in Paradise. Plus in 2007 they released Jetpack Refueled, which I already mentioned earlier. And in 2008, the latest Banjo & Kazooie game, Nuts and Bolts. Nuts and Bolts was the last recent game for the Xbox 360 that Rare did. But the last things that Rare did for the Xbox 360 or the Xbox Live Arcade in between 2008 and 2010 was re-released the 3 Nintendo 64 titles that I mentioned, with updated HD graphics in 1080p. And like I mentioned before, the Xbox 360 or Xbox Live Arcade games can be accessible through the dashboard or from the compilation. Now that's pretty much all there is to the Rare Replay. 30 awesome games involving 30 years of hard work in one for Xbox One, at a price of $30. And you totally can't go wrong. Well, before I reach the final verdict, there are a few flaws I want to go over with. Now, there might have been some technical issues for some games in the collection, like glitches, freezes, clunky controls, but hopefully they'll fix all these issues with patches soon. And I can tell you one thing that could be useful for retro games is a rapid fire option, which is known as the auto fire, or on the NES the turbo buttons, because games like Battletoads, Snake Round Roll, Solar Jetman, and other games that are butt mashers in somewhat ways, and tapping the button repeatedly tires out your hand really fast. Well, it tires mine out. So I hope that they do an update for the retro games on the Rare Replay compilation about the auto fire thing eventually. There was also a lot more games from Rare than what was on this collection, and were some that should have been on it. But then again, I understand why that some of them weren't on the collection due to legal issues. For instance, that spiritual successor I was talking about with Perfect Dark earlier was one of the best movie-based games of all time, that's 1,000 times better than the movie itself, was GoldenEye 007. That was one of the most influential first-person shooter games I have ever played. And GoldenEye was one of the games that put Nintendo 64 console on top of the world at the time. But sadly, Rare doesn't have any rights for 007 franchise any longer. Plus other legal issues with other games like Donkey Kong Country, which always been owned by Nintendo, so Rare can't do anything about that one either. There were other many Rare titles that were on all platforms that should have been added to the collection, but that would take too long to explain, and hopefully there will be DLC to add more games to the collection, and get to the point of saying never mind to the big 3-0, just go buy 30 plus. Now I do have plans and other thoughts about doing reviews and let's plays on the games that are on this compilation, and there's a lot to talk about. It's just that it'll take too long to explain. In fact, I think I took up too much time already. So there you have it. Rare Replay, one of the best compilations ever. And with 30 games for $30, it's totally a must-have. Dixon logging out.